All right, so I don't know if this is actually at Ask HershNoeie, but someone asked me a very good question, and I'm going to just put it as a HershNoeie. And I got an email from someone asking, what would I suggest? Hold on a second. All right, sorry, I had to make sure I turn notifications off. But what would I suggest, or what advice would I give young black men who are coming up? What would I suggest that they do in terms of their future and all of that type of stuff, right? And I have to say, I appreciate that question. I think that when I was growing up, I didn't have a father in my life. My mother and father were married. Some of you know this story. I was the youngest. My parents were married for over 30 years, got a divorce whenever I was right as I was about to be born. So I was kind of like an oops. I was kind of like a makeup session baby. And so I didn't have my father. I was the only boy, the youngest. My sisters got to see my father. I only saw him a handful of times, even though we were really in the same city. But it took me a while to really understand what life really means and what it means to be a man. It took a long time for that to happen, whereas in some individuals' cases, they had a better start with that because they had a man in their life. But I have to say, just because you have a father in your life doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to be taught what it is to be a man, right? It doesn't necessarily mean that, because there's a lot of people who come home every night to their families and their husband or a father, and they do a lousy job. So just because you don't have a father doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to be less than or anything like that. I'm not trying to brag, but I am doing better than a lot of people that I went to school with, in high school with, who had both parents. And so just because you start off in one position doesn't necessarily mean that that's going to tailor your entire life unless you make that happen. The other thing was, we were not super financially well off either, but by no means. We were very, very poor. And that had nothing to do with what happened in the future, because I use that as fuel to fight against that. I did not want to be poor again. And so for me, it was important for me to go to school, because I figured if I go to school, I'm going to probably get a better job and all of that type of stuff. And so things worked out well for me. School is not for everyone, and that's completely okay. But I'm gonna say these are some of the things that I wish I would have done early on that I didn't necessarily do. I think that when you turn 18, first off, I don't think you should drop out of school at all. No matter what the circumstances are, try to find a way to stay in school and graduate. If you don't go and graduate, make sure you get your GED. I think that's extremely important to do. Depending upon where you are, I would also get involved with after school programs, any sort of community centers that are available. Get involved there, volunteer your time. And I say this because, depending upon where you live, if you're living in the country, because I live kind of in a rural area, that's a little different. If you live in the inner city or you live in a big city, one of the best things you can do is volunteer. Really, anyone should. But volunteer your time, keep yourself super busy. The reason why I say that is because the more A, it keeps people out of trouble. B, it gives you a lot of job skills. And if you volunteer, you put that on your resume, a lot of times employers are like, wow, you gave your time during the summer or after school doing whatever. It gives you a better perspective of other people, and it gives you a better perspective of life. And it helps make you thankful for some of the things that you actually do have. Sometimes when you're in the middle of it, you don't realize how good you may have it, or maybe you're not the worst off. There may be other people. And one of the things that happens in poor communities especially is, yeah, you're living around a lot of poverty, but go volunteer at one of the homeless shelters or a food pantry or what have you, and then see how your life might be a little bit better than someone else. Sometimes that's enough to give someone the push to make it through. It also gives sometimes it gives people the inspiration to do more. It may spark a interest in your mind to actually go through and go into counseling or be a social worker or what have you. So I would say if you're 18 years of age and you've already graduated high school or you're thinking about it and you've dropped out for whatever reason, get your GED, make sure you volunteer. Spend your time volunteering. If you can't find a job or anything like that, volunteer. For those who say school is not for them, I would say definitely go to trade school. One of the big things that is missing is trade schools. You may not want to go to community college or a 4-year institution, and that's fine. But definitely go to trade school. You can be anything from a plumber, electrician. You can learn about computers. There's a whole litany of different things. You can learn how to brew beer. There's so many different things that you can do in terms of that. That's extremely important. I would also say get your passport. One of the very first things I think you should do is once you earn money is go and get a passport. That is had I known that early on, I think I would have been better off. Get a passport. And the good thing about it is they last for 10 years. You just do it and you're done. That opens up a whole lot of opportunities for you. And I'm not talking necessarily in terms of just working, but that opens up a whole lot of opportunities for you. It's a definite big thing to grow on. A lot of times young people, young black men too, go into the military. This is nothing against folks who've been in the military and nothing against folks who are a part of the military or what have you. I would suggest against that, to be honest with you. A lot of times you look at folks, and this is nothing against any of that, but I would say instead of going in that direction, now if someone needs discipline, yeah, military is probably a good thing for you. If you're someone who's, you know that you are going to create a problem, that things in your life are not that straight, then I would say go into the military. That would be a good thing. But there are some individuals who really and truly are better suited. If they're not going to go into the military, they're not going to go into college, they're better suited into going into a trade school. And therefore you can learn a skill that you'll have forever. A lot of carpenters make a tremendous amount of money. Plumbers, electricians, they make a load of money. I mean, the industry that I'm in, I can tell you, electricians make a bank load of money. I mean, you don't have to go to 4 years of college for that. I can tell you that is something that you will do very well in, right? They're always needed. Go into a career that is always needed. People are going to always need homes. So carpentry, framing, you can also go into masonry work. We don't have a lot of masons hardly anymore where you can actually do brick masons. They have block masons. They have different ones. Go into something like that. Again, trade school, because they make pretty good. Not a lot of people go into those, but that's something that you might want to look into. And it's also a lot more affordable many times than a 4-year college. You understand what I'm saying? So you're still a professional. Don't get it twisted. Some people think that, just because you go to trade school, you're not professional. You are. For those who want to go to college, I still say go get your passport. That should be the very first thing. It should be almost as automatic as getting your driver's license. Get a passport. Make sure you have that passport. When you're going to college, I would still say try to volunteer your time while you're in school. At least an hour a week, if you could even do that. Volunteer your time throughout, whether you're in college, whether you're not in college. The only time you can't volunteer your time is when you're active military, I guess. But volunteer, because that is going to show a lot in terms of your resume and then also in terms of your own mental growth. I would say in both circumstances, let me go back to college. Make sure that you try to achieve something that makes sense and interests you. Don't go for things that you think people want you to do. Don't go for things that people tell you can't do. Or don't get out of things because someone says you can't do it. I had a lot of people say, there's a glass ceiling here and you're not going to be able to penetrate it and all this other stuff. And so you never ever let someone, no matter what your grades show, no matter whatever, no matter if it takes you 10 years to graduate instead of 4, always keep your mind focused on getting through. Because I didn't graduate. Now Noelle did, but I didn't graduate in 4 years like that. It took me a while. So focus on that. I would say go to community college. It's a lot cheaper. A lot of times, depending upon if you set it up right, the community college you go to, all of those classes will transfer, or most of them will transfer over to the 4-year university. So some people can do this in school. In their high school, they can take classes that count towards their college credit, and a lot of them in certain areas, you're able to get 2 years of college out of the way just by going through high school. So depending upon where you are, that's what I would be focused on. But if that's not the case and you graduate high school and you're about ready to go into college, go to community college. The name of the school is not going to be that big of a deal unless you're going to an Ivy League school. I'm going to tell you that right now. People put a big emphasis behind, well, I went to such and such. At the end of the day, it doesn't really matter. What matters is, did you graduate? What grades did you get? Cool. What major did you actually go into? That's what matters more than just a name. Now, if you went to an Ivy League school, that's a little bit different. That's a big, big difference. I would say go to an HBCU if you can. Historically black college and university. It's very important. One, because they need the enrollment. I think that that's going to be very important. And two, it just helps shape, I think it helps shape you a lot better. It may be difficult for you, depending upon your circumstances. And if that's the case, so be it. Find a community college in your area and then find one that you know for a fact is going to the classes are going to transfer to a 4-year university. And then at that point, while you're going to community college, tour that university often, get ideas, hang around that campus. You can hang around a college campus. I mean, I can hang around a college campus. Learn things. It could be something there that sparks your mind and says, you know what? This is what I want to go into. So volunteer your time because that will help guide you sometimes in the career that you want to do. Also, work with some of the programs that they have. Talk to a lot of the academic advisors that are there. That gives you a whole lot more of a perspective as to what you may want to consider doing. You never know. While you're at school, definitely try to get some sort of apprentice program, something where you can actually work for a company. Now, you may have to go in there and work for free. Sometimes some schools, some classes, you have to go and basically to get class hours to pass that course, you have to work at the museum, for example. But these are things that kind of help guide you into terms of what you want to do as well in the future. So definitely do that. A lot of times if you are working for a company and you're just kind of doing it because it's a class requirement, they may choose to hire you because you already know how the company works or how that organization works. You have a general idea of what they do. So they may end up hiring you and that gets you into the door of earning something. I would say that during the summer months when you're out of school, try, if you can, definitely get a job. And prior to starting back up into school, take that money, save it, don't spend it buying stupid stuff. One of the things that was a big mistake for me was buying things I didn't need. A lot of clothes, shoes, the latest gadgets, not important. Stick with the stuff that you have, stick with the clothes that you have, save your money as much as you possibly can. Take a little bit of that money and travel overseas. I think in all of the scenarios I mentioned, whether you're not going to college, but you're going to a trade school, the military, you probably will travel. And then if you're in college, travel. Use that passport, no matter which circumstance, get a passport. Use that passport and travel. Don't go to the typical everyday places that people go. Go to places that most people don't go to, because you will have a much better appreciation, much better respect. Go to places that people tell you don't go to, because I found that when I go to those places, it's completely different than what the media tells you and what society tells you. It's completely different. It's usually totally opposite. Definitely go to countries that are super advanced. Go to places like Japan. Immerse yourself in that. Go to places like Hong Kong. Immerse yourself into that. Go to places like Dubai, immerse yourself into that, right? Go to places like Kenya, go to places like Ghana or Cote d'Ivoire or South Africa. Go to Italy, go to Greece. Go to places that are going to very much interest you. Don't go to just always the typical places. I know people go to Italy a lot, but go to places that are going to definitely give you a good education. I think traveling in general is going to do that, but go to places like Haiti. See the truth. And so I think that things like that is, you can't even put a price tag on it. It's very, very valuable. It also gives you an idea in terms of what you want to do with your life, because you may end up choosing a particular career or a particular profession and then say, you know what, maybe I want to do something else. Or you could take what you know and go to a country like Haiti and say, you know what, I'm going to teach folks how to do electrical. Or, you know what, I'm going to go to I don't know, country and teach social working. Or maybe, you know what, I want to, in the middle of my schooling, I want to actually take a full year and go to some school in Japan or into China or wherever. Give yourself an opportunity to see the world, because once you get to a certain age, you're going to get super busy, and traveling is not going to necessarily happen a lot of times. You get more responsibilities. I would say early on in your life, travel. Here, when I moved here, that's all we heard of was young people talking about traveling and going to different places, and they're going to go to Poland for 2 weeks, and then after that, they're going to go to, Germany and spend a month, and it's like, wow. So, in other parts of the country, people don't really mention that much, and most people don't have passports. I would say that is the very first thing that should happen. Instead of buying stuff that you don't need that's going to wear out in 3 months, get a passport that lasts for 10 years, and it's going to give you a whole lifetime of learning that you're never going to get in a classroom. You're never going to get in a classroom. Your success will be much greater when you do things like that, because you have a different perspective of things. I started to get a better perspective of life, people, the world, how our government works when I traveled. I didn't learn that actually going through college, and I have 2 degrees sitting up there on the wall. I didn't learn it from there. I learned it when I actually went to different places in the world. So that's what I would definitely do. I think that things like relationships and all of that should wait. One of the big problems too is that especially young men want to get into a relationship with someone, or they want to have a girlfriend or some fun, what have you. I would say definitely protect yourself at all times. Definitely wear protection. Definitely make sure, and the good thing is the vast majority of young black men don't have kids. The stereotype is that they all do, but the vast majority don't. Make sure that you always keep yourself in check always. Stay clear of things that definitely doesn't make sense, things that you know aren't right. Stay away from people that are toxic. By every stance that you can, stay away from toxic people. Focus on you, be selfish, and focus on you. Don't focus on anybody else. You don't have any responsibilities. You don't know anybody or any group, anything. So you owe yourself a lot. Focus on you and focus on the future. Think about every single situation, because that can really shape and damage your future. There's a lot of people and a lot of things that can tear you down and are always going to be trying to tear you down. So focus on you. Focus on what you need to do to get to the next step and to the next stage. Then I would say, when you do finally get all of this traveling and everything out of your system, then focus on a career after you get done with college, or after you get done with your chosen path that you've taken. Then I would say focus on your job, focus on that, build up wealth, build up income. Don't waste time buying a bunch of cars, because that's a liability. Focus on property, real estate, something that's going to appreciate. I think that's one of the big things that's also missing is finances. Teaching kids about that. Learn about the stock market. I didn't learn about that. Learn about the stock market. Learn about things, and on purpose in college, take those types of courses. If you didn't go to college, you can still learn about financial planning and stock market and everything you want just by taking one class. So save your money as if it's the most precious thing in the world, and don't spend it on stupid brands and shirts and chains and dumb stuff that's not going to get you anywhere. Be stingy as much as you possibly can. Be stingy, and then use that money for you and to better yourself. That is something, again, that I think is missing. I didn't have to really worry about that as much because, I'm a penny pincher, so that's just kind of how I was. But keep your money as much as you can close to yourself. Never tip your hand. Never tell people, hey, I got all this. Never do that. Be as humble as you possibly can be, because I've had many a times where people will say, well, he's very cocky. You have a lot of people that will tell you, especially once you've actually been pretty well educated and you've traveled a little bit. Some people are intimidated by that. Don't let that throw you off your game. Continue doing what you need to do. Again, focus on the bigger picture. Always people are going to always talk. People are always going to have something negative to say. And typically you just have to let that roll off your back and just keep it moving. Don't argue with people. There's no point in arguing. Stay out of situations that are going to be bad or that look like they're going to be a problem. And then when you do finally decide to settle down, make sure that you do get married. Now, people will say, no, don't get married. That's stupid. Blah, blah, blah. I'm looking at stability. And one of the things that is going to create stability for you is first finding, which is very, very difficult, finding the right person for you. Finding the person that is truly worth your time. Because keep in mind, you've built up a whole history from the time you were 18, the stuff whichever path you chose, whether it was in trade school or the military or whether it's going to college, you've built this whole history. You've done a lot of the volunteering. You stayed on the straight and narrow. You've actually, went around the world. You have all this. Don't waste it on trash. Don't waste it on the pretty, because it's typically deceptive. Back in the day, I dated a couple of models or two. I was kind of proud of myself. They were truly models. But it was just all toxic. Not saying that they technically were, just the circumstance and situation. It's just not good. That's not the person that you're going to end up marrying typically. And if you do, there's typically issues there. I'm just saying. So make sure that when you do find a person, it's someone that has a lot that they can bring to the table. Don't feel like you have to be obligated to anybody. You find the person that brings something to the table, that they're worth your time, and that your family or whoever you care the most about can be proud of that you're with. Take your time. Don't waste it on something stupid. Don't go for someone who's just trying to show you a lot up front, because apparently they don't have a lot to offer other than what they're able to just show you up front. That's kind of pretty much my advice. I think that, definitely just like with Noelle, once I figured out certain key things, and of course, it took me a divorce first with someone else to learn these things. But once I was done with that divorce and I went out and did all my little, gallivanting and, being a little bit of, a playboy or whatever you want to call it. After I did all of that, I knew exactly the person that I wanted. I knew exactly it just clicked. I knew exactly the things that had to happen, that person had to possess for me to be able to even entertain it. There's only been 2 people that have seen my mom that I've ever dated, been with, and both of them I married. I didn't bring just anybody around. There's only been 2 people that has ever seen my mom and my sister. That's it. So for me, Noelle ticked off all these different columns, and it was interesting. And then later on, as I got to know her, she started to fill in a lot of these other prereqs. And then there's certain bonuses. There's other things that annoy me. But the vast majority of things are the much needed. Had to be. These are things that I had to have. And she completed all of that and more. So I knew I was going to marry her. There was no question. It was crystal clear. I could make decisions without having to really sit and think and regret and later on that, oh, why did I do that? It was easy. Once you have the experience under your belt, don't go through and make some of the mistakes I did. Once you have the experience under your belt and you've actually traveled, did a lot of things, you got to know different people, different perspectives, you get to learn more about yourself, you get to learn more about what you're able to deal with, you're stronger than what you may think, then you're able to find the person that makes good sense for you. Marry that person. Marry that person. Take your time, obviously. Don't just, I've known you for a day, so I'm going to marry you. Take your time. But treat that person like gold. Treat them like respect, with tremendous respect. Make sure you get that back. Relationship is reciprocal. Make sure that what you're putting in, you're getting back as well. It's not a tit for tat necessarily, but what you put in, they're able to deliver back. Make sure that you have someone that's able to, they're not, dense and they can't hold a conversation. Make sure you have someone that, again, can sit and hold a conversation with you and that you're proud to bring around to people. That's someone that's just as bright and as intelligent as you're going to be. So to me, that is the pathway for success. If you do those types of things typically work out pretty well. Again, thank you for the question. I appreciate it. Kind of honored that someone asked me, but yeah, I would say these are things that I would definitely do at the age of 18 all the way up. Definitely travel the world. Heck, even live in another country if you need to. Make sure you like, share, and subscribe. Until next time, I will see you. Take care.